Reading. Like everybody else, VIPs receive loads of hard copy material. A lot of it is usually rubbish, and of the meaningful stuff, the vital information is around 10%. Sighted people can get to that 10% fairly quickly. Most, if not all, VIPs can't read normal material, and for those who use technological assistance, the technology has to wade through details like fax numbers, company registration numbers, directors, and a host of other details, as well as long preambles before the point of the letter emerges. And then there are newsletters that are set out in columns, or with text boxes and pictures, some of which may be of interest to a VIP. There is a similar issue with websites. Have you ever listened to a computer reading the hieroglyphics of a full line of a website link? The above is just to highlight the VIP experience, so offers to read material, particularly on a regular basis, are very welcome. For a VIP, learning to use a scanner reader helps a lot, but there are limitations. Social inclusion. Conversation. Isolation can be a real problem for those who are visually impaired. It's important to watch out for that VIP who is alone in the gathering of people. They cannot recognize or see anyone to be able to go up to them and get into conversation. And if you speak to a VIP, you need to say who you are. And don't be insulted if a VIP passes you by. They probably don't know who you are. There have been many occasions when someone has started a conversation with me, but I was too embarrassed to ask them who they were. In this situation, I try to wing it, but it takes enormous concentration not to get caught out. Another version of charades. Once solved, I then say something like, "Now I know who you are," with a little humour and explanation, and hope that educates them for their next VIP encounter. It may be surprising, but 55% of interpersonal communication is by way of body language, 35% voice tone, and just 20% words. Remembering that VIPs miss out totally on body language, communication is only 45% effective unless both parties take some extra measures. VIPs naturally make adjustments to the same level of communication as happens in telephone conversation. So do understand that if they don't seem to get it, or at least what you think you have communicated. Facial expressions, glances, nods, questioning looks, etc. are all lost on the VIP. Also, bear in mind that while they may be looking at you, they will not be making eye contact. It's like you talking to someone with your eyes closed. Try it for 10 minutes. And if you offer your hand for a handshake and it is not reciprocated, don't take that as a rebuff. Most likely it has not been seen. Say something like, "Here, I'll shake your hand," or if the VIP's hand is in a free and easy position, make the first move, thus transferring the initiative to the sighted person. I use the same trick when expecting change from a cashier by putting my hand out in an upturned position, thus inviting the change to be put into it, rather than not seeing their hand coming first or them placing it on a counter where I would otherwise have the difficulty of finding it. Events and entertainment. At events, meetings, church services, etc., you need to fill in essential visual occurrences and descriptions, and particularly important bits of written information. If necessary, delay proceedings so something can be read out. I once went to the cinema with a friend for the film The King's Speech. The film is high on oral content and low on activity, and my friend quietly filled in the necessary visual bits. I saw nothing, but got as much from the movie as any sighted person, and really appreciated my friend's kindness. So there is a thoughtful action for some VIP you may know. VIPs may be limited in pursuit of their special interests, and maybe you can enhance their experience in some areas. That may be going for walks or including them in watching football on television with a little added explanation and description. If there is a VIP among your friends and acquaintances, find out what they need the greatest assistance with and see if you can help with something, and also be prepared for some ongoing input. Think particularly of VIPs who live alone. In conclusion, nobody is expected to provide all of the ongoing assistance included above. It is meant as a guide and an insight into an unsighted world. But every little bit of assistance helps. Whether through occasional encounters or ongoing labours of love, be that Good Samaritan. And on behalf of all VIPs, thank you so much for all your kindnesses, which make life so much easier. May the Lord bless you. Robert Thompson. Myths exploded. As we encounter people with disabilities, it is natural to acquire beliefs about their disability or the constraints they have in their daily lives. Visual impairment is no exception to this, but there are many widely held assumptions that are often inaccurate. For the purpose of this note, let's call them myths. Here are just a few. Hearing improves following sight loss. Not true. We just learn to use what we have a lot more. Consequently, it is our listening rather than our hearing that improves in the interest of survival in all sorts of situations. We just use what we have to better advantage. Most people who are registered blind cannot see at all. A myth. Over 90% of those who are registered blind have reduced sight and consequently various levels of visual function. There are many different causes of sight loss with as many symptoms, so there is no consistency across what each individual VIP can or cannot see. And you may be surprised that a VIP may see some things perfectly well and other things not at all. A VIP's eyes will look at least a bit blind. This is generally not true, although there are exceptions. It may be disconcerting to engage with a VIP when their eyes look normal, and it may be hard to believe that you are actually speaking to a blind person. And we don't just lay it on for effect. Can better glasses or laser surgery not help? This is a comment that is often made to me with an accompanying expectation that it should. If there was some hope, I would have been queuing up for it. Yes, such procedures have helped many VIPs return to functional sight, and have taken some out of the VIP category, but many remain there without the prospect of surgery to improve matters. You should get a guide dog. A frequent suggestion is, you should get a guide dog. This is proposed in the mistaken belief that it will solve all mobility needs. It should first be understood that guide dogs cannot assess the movement of vehicles, and consequently, if crossing a road, the dog will find the curb and stop when the VIP must decide whether it is safe to cross. Also, many people don't appreciate the challenges of cleaning up after a dog when you can't see. Nevertheless, I now enjoy the privilege of having a guide dog, and this is enormously helpful. Part 2. A selection of personal experiences. Light in my tunnel. Is there any light down that tunnel? 10 years ago I could hardly ask that question, let alone answer it, and much less look for any glimmer of light. The hole was deep, very deep, and its air heavy with a feeling of panic. Lying in bed at 10 in the morning, the only motivation to get up was embarrassment. Embarrassed lest anyone find out, as heretofore normal rising was before 7 a.m. A few years earlier, sight loss had deprived me of the option to drive, but living in the Greater Dublin area, there was the alternative of, despite many opinions to the contrary, a reasonably good public transport system. That, and the enjoyment of cycling, meant it wasn't too difficult to transition from the independence of that all-too-convenient motor vehicle. But this newer experience was something quite different and distressing. I was facing a world of shadows, isolation, and loss of purpose.